Hey everybody, it's me, Derek the Chocolate Botanist, and today we're going to be talking about insects. Whenever you see this, I want you to share this out with like two or three people. Help a scientist out. Can you do that? So we got some people joining. We're going to have a plant biologist, which is me. We're going to have an entomologist, a bug person come up here. So again, y'all join on where we're going to be talking about bugs because they bug us, right? Whenever you are getting yourself some plants together, right? This is the lead in. What the hook going to be? Whenever you are deciding to live a life with plants, whether you're doing somebody's herbology or you are making reefs or you are doing house plants or outdoor plants, some insect, some pest is going to be pestering you. You, as a person that is now dealing with those pests, have to figure out the how, the why, and the what for. So myself and Nadia, we're going to be talking about bugs, integrated pest management. What does that mean? How can you keep insects away from your plants? Or how can you learn to live with them? And whenever she is ready, opportunity to ask your questions about bugs, right? About bugs when it comes to those that are doing your pesting stuff. Okay, I finally have her on a live with me. Hello, hello. How are you doing, my
I'm
dear?
doing great. How about yourself?
I am doing good. You look just, your skin is popping. Y'all see her? Her skin is glowing and all clear. And you're looking, you look good. Whatever you're doing, keep doing
Thank you.
it. So, tell the people who you is and what you about.
All right, so my name's Nadia Ruffin. Online, I'm known as Urban Farm Sister. But I do many things. I have a Master's of Science from the University of Nebraska in entomology. I've always been interested in insects, so I've used my platforms to actually teach people about insects and many other things in agriculture. I have a bachelor's of science from Ohio State University. Um, there I studied animal sciences. I was trying to go to veterinary school, but I ended up doing veterinary research and things like that. So I'm really well versed in a lot of scientific areas, not just entomology, public health, plant pathology, all types of stuff. So I help people online with their plants as well as, starting agricultural businesses and all types of stuff. But the insects, they seem to trip people up all the time. So I'd like to go on and, educate people about how to control them without, killing the environment, killing your plants, or even possibly even killing yourself. Because I've seen people use some strange stuff.
Look, you know what? Let's jump into that because this is again your time to ask y'all questions, party people. What is the strangest thing you have heard somebody use to try to keep a bug away indoor or outdoor?
um, Mothballs, using mothballs outside. That
Mm,
is so dangerous, not just for the environment, but anything else that may come in contact with those mothballs. So the chemical inside mothballs is called naphthalene, and it's actually
hmm
a carcinogen. And people will put them outside, thinking that they're, controlling some insect, and it doesn't really work on the outside environment, and it's really not safe. There's been a lot of studies that say that if people that use a lot of mothballs in their homes and things, that they actually can cause different types of anemia, as well as some respiratory cancers and things like that. So that's one of the most dangerous things I've seen people use, other than things like bleach, gasoline, uh, all types of stuff.
You took what I was about to say because I've seen people who say fire ants, they just pour gasoline
Yes.
on the ground. And I'm
Yeah.
like, all right, the mothballs I've heard of when people are trying to keep snakes away because like the sulfur or something smell is supposed to keep, and it's like okay, but they make like specific products. Like sometimes if you want to make something for something else, okay, great, but they make products to keep snakes away. But even then, it's a part of our world. So that is wild. Okay,
Yes.
I'm trying to think. Soap, the grits for fire ants, which I've seen some mixed results of that.
So
Um,
none of that stuff really works on fire ants.
hmm
They have certain pheromone type traps, as well as there's some um, fungal spores and things that they use that the workers have to take it back. The problem with fire ants is that they have multiple queens in their colonies. They don't just have one
Oh,
queen.
I didn't know
So
that.
you can have multiple queens. So they're laying eggs. That's why you have so many fire ants in such a small area, because you have multiple queens there. So you have to get all the queens. So you could kill one, but there might be 20 more that are, constantly laying eggs and things. So they're hard to control. And that usually when you find a mound, that's not really the entrance of the actual um, colony.
Uh-huh.
That's usually where they have just their eggs, or they'll have food stores there. The actual entrance is usually, a distance away from that mound. But people think that that mound is actually the entrance of those colonies. And so they'll put stuff there and then wonder why it doesn't work. You have to put things down that are going to have the workers take it back into the colony, and eventually, everybody will feed on it or be exposed to it. And then that's how you control them.
You done taught me something because even though I come against all of these plant hacks, you couldn't tell me grits didn't work because I've done it. I'm like you other people that talk. I've done it and I put the grits down and the ants disappeared. They was gone. But I could take it. I could take it, when I'm off and when I'm wrong. So this is dope. So we're gonna be answered. We're gonna pop some questions up. Some of you are putting your questions in the chat, which is dope. There's a question like feature, like there's a question mark somewhere at the bottom where y'all could type your questions in, so I don't have to scroll upwards and downwards. But we gonna make this work because why not? So let's see. Let's go to one of these first questions. And again, you have a whole plant biologist here, an entomologist, two black scientists who are able to get you what you need to be. So let's see what one of these first questions is going to be. Um, Somebody referenced thrips. They said they're scared of thrips. People on Reddit always just say trash a plant if it has thrips. I don't even know what to look for because they're so tiny. So I feel like, yeah, tell the people, because I know a little bit about thrips. I feel like I know what you can use to prevent them. But you here, so I'm not even going to go and wrap my mind. Tell us
All
about
right.
thrips and what to use.
So thrips, they are hard to control once you have a outbreak of them on the plant. If you can identify them, what you're going to have to use is either some type of magnifying glass, or you can cut the leaf off and look on the microscope. They are very tiny. The problem with them is that they actually can fly. So if you're treating them and you don't treat properly, you'll have adults that'll fly off and they'll fly to other plants. So they're very small. The first indicator that you have thrips is that your leaves will start to look papery thin. They'll start to turn brown in spots. It looks very thin and papery. If you look closely, you'll see little bitty things moving. They're not as small as spider mites, but they're pretty small. The way you can control them is, first of all, before they become a problem, is to put up some type of barrier. So that's usually, I have some examples of stuff here. Like insect, you can use netting that you can buy
Uh-huh.
at like,
Yes, insect thrift screening. You better be having it.
yeah, so you can get this. This is what you put up before you have a problem. Now, if you have a problem, never put netting up around the problem, because you just trap it in there and you just give it a smorgasbord of, there's no natural enemies or anything that can come in and control them. So with thrips, if you didn't get the barrier up and you start to have a problem with thrips, you want to cut off any leaves or any branches that are heavily infested. Then you want to use a neem oil, soap, cast out soap, things like this, neem oil and water spray. And you want to spray those leaves, and then if you can, some people are terrified. I would recommend that you wipe the leaves down to make sure you're wiping them off. They're young, they're not winged, so they will be the first ones that will most likely get killed. But the thing is, people only treat like one time, and they think that one time is going to fix the problem. You have to, when it comes to insects, you have to follow up between 7 to 14 days, depending on the insects. They reproduce that quickly. So you may think you got them all in that first treatment, but I would wait 7 to 14 days, and then I would treat again. And I would repeat this for about a month until you're not seeing any more damage. Other than that, there's, more serious types of pesticides that you can use, but I would use those methods first before I go into using any of those more serious pesticides that are kind of bad for the environment, as well as if you're growing like food and stuff, sometimes you don't want to spray that stuff on there. Now, if they're ornamental plants, that's different. But any type of food product, you want to use minimal amount of chemicals as possible.
Doperino, and I feel like you can correct me on this. Pyrethrin, isn't that a threat pesticide, or am I making it up?
So it is a threat pesticide, and it does come from the chrysanthemums,
Mm-hmm.
but it can be a pretty bad pesticide if you're constantly spraying it. It's really bad for the respiratory system.
Mm-hmm.
People seem to overuse it because they don't use it as directed, and
Mm-hmm.
that's more of a commercial pesticide that's used.
Yeah, yeah.
So they'll spray it a lot out in the environment, and usually they'll have on, like suits and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
A home person that's got a garden at home, I would recommend they not use pyrethrins because, like, again, they can be respiratory problems. They can cause skin irritations and all types of stuff if you're not using them correctly.
Look at this. We got all the information coming in. So again, those of you who are here, plant biologists, entomologists, we have two Black scientists, two Black people who are in the STEM who could help you get what you need. So the next one was more of a commentary on what you kind of mentioned, neem oil, water, and liquid wash in the evenings. They're trying to basically prevent the insects on their edibles, but they still have a problem with it.
Okay.
So if you're doing this in the evening, they're putting neem oil, water, in a liquid wash. I'm assuming some type of soap on their edibles. What you got to say about that?
Okay, so people think neem oil water, that's going to treat everything. Some things can circumvent that and it doesn't affect them at all. One of those being
Mm-hmm.
caterpillars. So if you got to figure out what's actually feeding on your plants at night. So that means you might have to go out there with a flashlight, a black light, see what, fluoresces back, and then you go from there treating. Neem oil, the soap spray doesn't work on everything. So if you're having problems with caterpillars, there's things you have to use for them. If you're having problems with beetles, there's other things you have to use for them. Neem oil is not a cure-all for everything. So the first thing you need to do is figure out what is actually feeding on there. Now, if you have a combination of things, say you have beetles, you have caterpillars. For caterpillars, I recommend BT because neem oil doesn't really work on them. Some of them, it just does not affect them. The bigger the caterpillar gets, it just does not have an effect. Sometimes beetles are not affected by neem oil, but they are affected by diatomaceous earth. So you have to know what's feeding on there before you start doing treatments. And that's what a lot of people don't do. They just dump stuff on their plant and they're like, well, it's not working. Well, you're not using the right treatment for what you have present.
So you mean to tell me I just can't walk outside and blindly spray my whole yard with neem oil and
No.
just get rid of every bug?
Nope.
Is that what you're telling me?
That's what I'm telling you.
Because I know, and I know what I say to people who are like, I want to do plants, but I don't want to see any bug. What do you say to people? Because I know what I tell the people.
Oh,
What do you say to people who are like, I don't want any bugs anywhere near my plants? What do you tell them people?
I tell them, well, then you don't need to be planting outside. You just need to stay indoors. Because when you plant things, they're gonna come. Some things, everything that's on your plant is not bad, and even the things that are feeding on your plant, you just provided what his host plant that it needs to survive. So they're not always, you know, they're not always pests. They're just doing what they would do naturally, and you just provided them that meal, or you provided what their young will need to grow and things like that. So I always tell them that if you plant something, the insects and stuff are going to come, the good, the bad ones, and in between. It's also going to attract animals, other animals, other wildlife, depending on what you're planting out there. So you just have to be mindful of that. I know a lot of people get terrified because they'll see snakes in their yards that they had never seen before. And I said, well, the snakes were out there. You're just becoming aware of them now because you're out there with them. But if you're planting things and they're prey is using those plants, they're going to come to feed on that prey. So when you plant stuff, you invite wildlife, insects, up to deer to your yard.
I love it. And see, you even nicer than me because I tell them if you don't want no bugs on no plant, indoor, outdoor, get plastic ones because that way you could go ahead and put them in the washing machine every night, wash them and dry them, and then you good.
Right.
Like any plant you bring in is gonna have somebody's insect. I love it. Ooh, I like this one too. Is the use of beneficial insects better for the environment overall?
Um, so buying commercial beneficial insects is not always good for the environment. Reason being, okay, an example would be lady beetles, or y'all call them ladybugs. I'm an entomologist, so I call them lady beetles. But
Excuse me.
uh, the lady beetles, people can buy them commercially, but they don't realize that a lot of them are taken out of the wild, then sold to you. And then when you get them to your home, what happens is they take them out of, they're hibernating. They'll package them up. You put them in your garden or your farm, and you just leave them out there. And their first instinct is to just fly away and just find a place to live. So a lot of times people will buy all these lady beetles, and by the end of the day, once they release them, they're all gone. And so I have to tell them, I'm like, well, first of all, you're working against something's own biology. Their biology tells them when they come out of dormancy from hibernation, their first instinct is to fly away, go find mates, and go find a food source. Also, you can't put a beneficial insect on a plant that does not have a problem. So if your plant doesn't have any insects on it, they're definitely not going to stick around because there's no food there. You have to have a problem. So if you say you have tomatoes and they have aphids, some of those lady beetles may stick around, but for the most part, the majority of them are going to fly away. But if you don't have any food source there, they're definitely going to leave. So people try to release, lady beetles and praying mantis and things out into the environment as a preventative, when in reality, what has to happen is that your plant has to have a problem, and that actually will attract those things out in nature to your plants. So you don't even have to
Mm.
buy them. But if there's no food source there and there's no nesting places there and all that other stuff, then those insects are not going to stick around. They're going to go where their food is, so they can either feed their young themselves or they have a place to nest and hide and things like that.
Mm. I love it. So Nadia has been giving us beautiful information. I've been wanting to go live with her for years, literal years. And I am glad we're doing it today. So again, this is your opportunity to ask your pest questions. Whatever question is pestering you about the bugs, you can also ask like random plant science questions that I can talk about it. But we have a person here who is giving you all free information. And I just love for us to celebrate the people. So
So
I
there's
can't put
another it's
uh-huh.
another chemical. I know it's another chemical that people always want to seem to put on their plant, and that's vinegar. Um, and I tell them the only time you put vinegar on a plant is if you're making a salad. That's the only time
Look,
when you need to have vinegar on there.
the only time I spray vinegar on a plant is definitely if I'm making an extraction or a salad. That's it. I put them orange peels in that vinegar and I'm like, boom, made my own cleaner. And then I do one of these numbers, so I feel like y'all cousin Hamilton. But I shouldn't talk about that man like that. That is vinegar. That is wild. I've seen a lot of people who love to dump Epsom salt on their plants
Oh,
because they see the people in the magnesium and it's supposed to help it. I'm like, well, did your plant need it?
right,
What was going
right,
on?
right. So
So,
I've seen them dump Epsom salt, vinegar, all that, and then they kill their plant, and then they be like, "Well, I don't know what happened."
that's
Well,
exactly what they do.
first of all, you need to understand chemistry, pH, salts, and how none of that's supposed to be on plants.
No,
They need a certain pH to survive at, and you totally exceeded that by dumping vinegar on it. You burned it with nitrogen. They need to It's a lot of things they don't understand,
of
and that's what I
course.
always tell people. When you get a plant or you're deciding to start a garden or a farm, you need to research the plants that you're planting. You need to look at what type of environment did this plant originally live in. Is my environment conducive for it to survive? Then you need to look and see what insects actually will feed on this. What animals will other animals will actually feed on it. What's my best um, fertilizers? All that types of stuff. People always think that healthy plants can't get insects, and I have to tell them all the time, any plant can get insects. It's just that the sick ones, they succumb to them faster than the healthy ones. But that's why plants have created, all these plant host resistance things. They have chemicals they make, they have thorns, tough leaves, wax, all types of stuff. But the insects, as well as other herbivores, they find a way to circumvent that so that they can still feed on that stuff. And you have to understand that so that you can control these things.
You know, the real of it is, and you should get this from all the reels I post. Just because a random person on the internet says to put this thing on your plant doesn't mean you should just by default do it. So
Right.
just because somebody tells you to cover your plants in cinnamon and vinegar and Epsom salt and banana peel water and all these other things does not mean you should just be like, yep, this is it. I'm going to do this thing, because
Yes.
that person isn't going to be with you when your plants are dead or covered in insects and roaches and fungi. When your
Right.
plants are dripping with mold and gnats, that person
Yes.
is going to come and be like, "Whoa, let me show you what to do to fix it."
Right. Right.
Uh,
So go ahead.
I am here for it. So we got two questions here in the question chat. I'm going to correct one because I know he doesn't know the zones have changed. So we got the first question from Sherry Cassie. I should be reading these names out when I'm doing the questions for later, but I didn't. We're going to start
Okay.
reading them now. I feel bad for ladybugs in the bags, though. So does it hurt anything to buy them and free them? That sounds like a very bleeding heart question. So she wants to know, does it hurt anything to just buy the ladybugs because they're in the bags all cramped up? They could be in a deluxe apartment in the sky. Could she just buy the ladybugs and just set them free? Does that hurt anything?
Yeah, it actually does, because you're introducing a predator into the environment that what's normally there. So you already have lady beetles and things that live already out in your environment. Then to release them, they're going to be competing with the native
Mm-hmm.
ones, and the ones that have already have been living there. So just be mindful of that. Again, they're not going to stay where you release them, so they're going to fly away. Um, they may or may not find a food source, so you may be doing them more damage than good by doing
Lord, not you breaking her dream. She had a dream. She
that.
had a dream to free every ladybug. I could see Cherry. She was probably going to buy about $2,500 worth of ladybugs and just have a big thing in her yard with some s'mores and just let them all free. She can't do that.
I, I would suggest not to do that. That'd be like releasing a whole bunch of burdock seeds into the environment, and
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. They don't know. They don't know about that. They don't know about that. They just want to make it free. They just want
right.
to be
But
free.
you make stuff free, but then you forget the other things that are living there that now these things are going to be competing with. So we already have a smaller amount of environment that these insects can actually live in. Especially if you live in an urban area, you cut down on the forest and all that stuff. So there's a very limited space that all these things are living in, and so they're going to be competing for food, and then they're going to outcompete the stuff that is native. So just
Mm. Because I
have to be
mean,
mindful of that.
it really is a competition, and it's like if there's only so many seats in your local buffet, and we decide to let somebody's family and they 40 family members come in, what's gonna happen? You ain't gonna get no seats.
Right.
So it's the same thing. So we got this from NJ Boutros. He says he's planning on getting 1 or 2 hives this year. He didn't write this in the comment, but NJ Boutros also plans on giving me like a little bit of honey from these hives every year. He meant to put that in here. Just putting that out there. What will that help with any type of pests? Will that help with any type of pest in zone 7, technically zone 8, because the zones have changed? Nick, what were you asking? This question is, can you see the questions in the little question box, Nadia?
I don't see the questions.
That
All I
sucks.
all I see is the um I guess people that log in and put questions in the scrolling, but I don't see the question box.
Okay, you don't have access to that on your
No.
end. That sucks. Um, because usually both of us can say it's okay. Instagram wants to be a booty. So NJ Boutros, if he's still here, Nick, if you're still here, please. He's basically talking about getting two hives.
Okay.
I guess can you talk about beehives and what kind of pests typically run into those?
Okay. Yes. Because I own beehives. And I teach people how to keep bees. But three major pests are hive beetles, varroa mites, and wax moth. I actually did a research project
Mm-hmm.
through SARE. I got a grant where I was researching using biological controls to control hive beetles and wax moth. So hive beetles, they're a problem. They were introduced from Africa. They came over here. What they do is that they will, if you don't get them under control, they can cause hive to actually just up and leave because their numbers get so out of control, and their larvae, they will go inside where the uh, developing larvae are. The beetle larvae will go
Mm-hmm.
inside where the developing larvae are, and they will feed on the wax. Even some of the developing bee larvae, they'll create like this greasy layer. They can mess up honey and all types of stuff inside
Mm-hmm.
of there. And then the bees are constantly trying to get rid of them, so they are focusing more energy on trying to get rid of those beetles instead of going out foraging or taking care of the queen and stuff like that. So they're a problem. The wax moths are also a problem because they feed on the wax, and they're more of a problem when you actually go and harvest your honey and you store those frames somewhere. If you don't freeze them, those larvae will go in and damage that honey. Um, and so you don't want that. And then varroa mites, they cause a lot of problems with the developing larvae. So those are the main three that are problems, but you can have problems also with yellow jackets. Um, some types of spiders will try to invade your hives and they'll be hunting your bees at the front of your hive and stuff. And then we have these lizards that were introduced here in Cincinnati. I'm in Ohio. Um, and I've noticed that those lizards will actually hunt my bees. They'll hang out by the entrance and they'll pick off some of the bees every now and then. Um, but yes, there are pests that invade hives. And also, if you start a new hive, I would not recommend you take honey from that hive that first year. You want that hive to get established and have that queen build up brood and things like that. So you have workers and all of that. And then you take that honey the following spring after they've overwintered. A lot of beekeepers, they take the honey in the winter fall time and they replace them with fondant sugar, and that's what they let them feed over the winter with. I don't do that to my bees. My bees are I use mine to teach with, so I try to let them stay as natural as possible. I don't really want to be replacing them with sugar as a source when they went and foraged all that honey to survive over the winter, because that's going to provide them with the nutrients that they need better than me just giving them sugar and sugar water and fondant and stuff like that. But it's recommended that you wait that first year unless you have a really, really productive hive. But if you don't, because usually the first year, if you've never kept bees, it's a big learning curve because they can up and leave any point in time, and you have to know like when they're stressed and uh, when they're becoming overpopulated, when to put on the new boxes and all types of stuff. So it's
Okay,
recommended that
so
you don't
he was
take honey
talking
that
about
first year.
would honeybees or bees prevent pests? And the answer to that is like if you're keeping a hive of bees, while they're beneficial insects and they would help your crop, whatever that is, your yard, your neighborhood, or whatever, they're not going to by default pick off um, your pest insects. They don't really do that. I have tried that with wasps. I grew some loofah. Have you grown loofah? I feel like you grew loofah.
Yep.
I remember the good loofah, and loofah have these nectaries, little like sacs on them that attract ants.
Yep.
So I had like black ants, not fire ants, but black ants crawling up and down my loofah. It was amazing, and they ended up being pollinated by wasps, and I had pest insects until the wasps came. I was also spraying Seven, which is something I try not to use anymore. But I really wanted my loofah to not have any problems anymore. So I say all that to say, yeah, no, bro, you still gonna have problems with your pests. So let's go to this is great. We got so many questions being answered. Again,
What
science is to here, getting your stuff done. What you say?
real quick about the loofahs though, those ants are actually beneficial. So don't try to ever get rid of the ants on there.
Oh
They
no,
will actually
I love
they will
the
actually fight. They will actually fight off the other pest insects.
the
And
ants
then
and
they'll
wasps.
also keep they will keep the bees and stuff from pollinating the flowers. They are so efficient with making sure nothing comes on that plant.
Now they and the wasps, they must have paid each other off or something because the wasps were chilling, they were chilling. In once they really came up in enough numbers, they kept the squash bugs and the vine borers. They just were kind of like in there. So that's when I started using the Seven, trying to like kill them off of the plant and in the plant.
Oh,
But
okay.
yeah, once the wasp and ants were like established, I stopped seeing a lot of squash beetles on those plants particularly. This was at a
Yeah.
community garden, so it was dope. But yeah, definitely ants, anything in that general family, the wasp family, the bees, the ants, except for yellow jackets because they're jerks. All of them are pretty much chill, you know. They really chill
Yes.
here. So we
Yes.
got another question here. Um, what's the difference between beneficial soil, mildew, fungus, and harmful? How can I tell? So what's the difference between beneficial, I guess, a fungi versus a non-beneficial one, and how can the layperson tell?
Um, you have to look at the plant. Is it actually damaging the plant? That's how you'll know if it's not beneficial or not. If you're seeing browning of the leaves and you're seeing fungus growing on that leaf or the stems, most likely it's feeding on that plant. Now that plant could be actually dying, so it's feeding on dead tissue. If the plant's not dying and you're seeing spots, like especially when it comes to powdery mildew and what's the other one? Downy mildew.
Mm-hmm.
If you're seeing spots on the leaves, then that's most likely that's a parasitic one. But if you're seeing it in the soil itself, it's not necessarily feeding on the plant, but it's feeding on some organic matter that's in the soil. When you're overwatering the plant, that's when you're going to see a lot of fungi growing. And if outside, you're going to see an eruption of mushrooms. And people always get freaked out with mushrooms. They're not bad. And it's also that's a sign that nature is doing what it's supposed to do when you see mushrooms come up. Mushrooms are decomposers. There are some that are parasitic that will grow, but you'll see them actually growing like out of trees and stuff. But the ones you're seeing in the soil, they're doing what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to be breaking down organic plant matter as well as any organic matter that's dead there, so that those nutrients can be returned back to the soil. But when people get freaked out every time they see a mushroom pop up, it's going to kill my plants. No, it's probably helping your plant. And you just have to understand that. People don't understand that all these things work together. You see the insects, you see the beetles and all this stuff, you see the mushrooms, you see the fungus. That's there for a reason. We broken that cycle, but all that stuff works together to return nutrients and break down stuff and give things energy and all types of stuff. But I have to say it probably started from school. There was a breakdown. People stopped teaching biology and all those classes, so they didn't get the foundation.
Foundation.
So when you try to like explain to them, yeah, that mushroom's supposed to be there. Now, if it's growing out the tree, that might mean that your tree is dead and something could have attacked it. It might have some beetle damage on the inside that has caused it to die or
Mm.
something like that. But if you're seeing mushrooms most likely growing out of trees, that tree or that limb is probably dying. So
And look, amen into that. So this is, look, better get ask these questions because I'm not gonna hold her here all night. I think around 9:30 we'll and say what we got to say. So again, you got your time to ask your bug questions. So many of y'all hit me up about this. Again, I could answer stuff, but I always rather show off other people who can give you those and who can show you what for, especially my Black people. So this is great. We got a question from Sass Potter. The crows and raccoons are digging up my lawn. Should I stop this? If so, how do I stop without using chemicals? Without using chemicals. Now that I know she has an answer for this without using any chemical. So let's see what you got.
Well, first we gotta figure out why they're digging up. It's either they're feeding on worms or they're feeding on probably beetle grubs. So you have to figure out what they're actually digging up. So you might have to go where you saw a lot of them in one area and maybe do a soil sample to see what's in there. And then you go from there deciding how you're going to treat them. If it's just worms, unless there's some invasive species of worms, I wouldn't worry about it. But if it's grubs, some grubs are worse than others. Japanese beetle being one that when they come out as adults, they feed on plants and then their larvae feed on roots. So they can be a problem. So to treat them, there are some um, fungal spores and things that you can actually treat that area with, and that it was one of those is milky spore, and I think the other one is called spinosad or something like that, where you can actually put it into the soil and treat them. Um, Now, if it's they're destroying your grass, that's different than if they're destroying like crops or food plants. um, it may be to the point where you have to take up that whole patch of grass and treat and then replant it. Depends on what's under there. So I can't give a recommended treatment until you know what's there. And then if you have animals feeding there, there's definitely some prey that they're feeding on. And I'm assuming that it's most likely either grubs or worms.
Well, there you go. There you go. So she said, look into the area, figure it out. You might have to use somebody's pesticide or chemical, or fungal based something. But there we go. That's better than my answer of just trying to befriend the crows and turn them against the raccoons. So I don't know what I was going to say. So you have virtual sovereignty. You just crows in trinkets, and then you tell them the raccoons want the trinkets, and then
Right,
boom,
right,
boom.
right,
Now
right.
you
Now
you,
you
you
now you got
solve the
war.
now they're warring. You do nothing. You go back in the house. You
Right,
come back out. Whoever wins, you now turn something else against them. It's a game. Hey,
right, right,
virtually sovereignty.
right.
Can ants help against slugs?
Not really. Um, uh, are you having a problem with slugs, or you just see slugs in your yard and you just don't want them there? Because they're also necessary too. They're also detritivores. A detritivore is anything that breaks down decomposing matter. But if you're having problems with slugs feeding on your plants, I would recommend you set up what are called beer traps, where you just use actual beer. You kind of dig a little trench, put a container of beer in there, and they'll be attracted to the fermentation of the microorganisms in the beer, and they'll fall down in there and they'll drown. But if you're just seeing slugs and you just don't want to see slugs, I don't know what to tell you. They out there.
Mhm.
So you have to tell me if they're causing a problem, or you just have a problem with them.
Look, that's the biggest thing. They problematic, or are you just tired of seeing them? There's a difference.
Right.
There,
And if it's been raining a lot, or if it's been cool and things like that, because I don't know where you live, it just come out.
she is,
Certain times of the year.
I think,
Go ahead.
yeah, I think she's in Ohio.
Oh, you shouldn't be seeing slugs right now. It's too cold.
And she's in Ohio, I believe, because she has told me about the OSU in there. Or maybe she's in Oklahoma. It's an O state. She'll comment, and we'll see in a few. But this is great. Somebody said they used to sleep through biology because they would make it so boring. Look, for me, I had the best science teachers, and the science was always so interesting just because it's like, this is how the world works. And like, do you mean to tell me that however many billion years ago, some stuff happened coincidentally that led into me being who I am now? Like, that is such an amazing thing for me. So the science is just always chill. The same person also wanted to talk about, um, they have squirrels eating their brassicas. They're making to-go plates. I can tell how to get rid of squirrels based off of a story that allegedly happened to a 17-year-old botanist. Back on the coast of North Carolina. Very made up story. He had some yard that he was planting many moons ago. This guy, great guy, best guy, one of the best guys I know. And he was trying to set up his yard and do some gardening and planting. But God bless it, the squirrels would have a field day anytime he would plant anything. They would come and basically uproot it and unplant it. And he bought a bird feeder because his brother had made one of them pine cone bird feeders in school, and they would disappear. And he thought it was the neighborhood kids taking them, so he made like a bunch of them, like 20 of them, of these bird pine cone feeders. So, because his grandmother loved to see the birds eat, and eat them. So one by one, all of those pine cones disappeared until he realized it's not like neighborhood children taking these, it's the squirrels.
Oh wow.
So this guy got very upset, allegedly, and mixed together peanut butter, Midol, turpentine, and like lemon pledge and some sedatives, and like put it all, and made like 50 pine cone situations and set them up all over the yard. And that area of the coast of North Carolina that he's from did not see squirrels for a year and a half.
Oh
Uh,
no.
all disappeared. So you could do that, but I'm sure Nadia has a better suggestion. I made up thing that's just a total hypothetical situation that didn't really happen to me.
So, so squirrels, again, they're gonna be more of, you have to do some type of mechanical barrier. So it might be the netting, um, predatory animals like cats and dogs will be a preventative. Also, sometimes spraying the plants with certain things like pepper sprays and things like that may help. Um, Only thing with squirrels, they're very smart with getting into certain things. So um, yeah, they're kind of a hard one. Once they figure out something is there, if you didn't put a mechanical barrier up, they're just going to keep coming back. But predators, they they work very well. I wouldn't recommend doing the poisoning because
Now, incidentally, in this made up story, he never saw a dead squirrel, but no squirrels were in that neighborhood for about a year, year and a half. I just wanted to be known.
they probably went up in their little trees and died.
They probably went in there and never came back out. But they still to this day, and this was when this guy was 17, so that's about 17 years ago almost. They still to this day, they know when he comes into town. Them squirrels recognize this is the guy that took out several generations of squirrels.
Yes.
This is that guy. So I love it. So we have definitely the spray. I've tried some of the sulfur sprays for the squirrels.
Yeah.
A real tip, because the other story was real. But I've tried some of the sulfur sprays, like the little, this smells terrible. They, mainly kept me away because they smelled so bad, and like the whole yard would smell terrible. So they're supposed to work, but I wouldn't recommend them if you're like, especially if you got an HOA, because they're gonna think you've killed somebody. Um,
So they have some that's like, is it coyote urine or something? I don't know if you tried those. They're like some kind of predatory urine that you would spray out. Um,
got it.
they don't smell as bad, but it's gonna smell like some animal has urinated around there.
Yeah,
Um, of again, it's like you're trying to recreate uh, a predatory territory that they don't want to cross over. Um,
outside.
like I guess yes, if you can attract hawks and things, that'll keep them away too. But then if you have chickens and stuff, then the hawks become a problem with your chickens and other poultry. So
Uh,
yeah, it's 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 gonna be a more of a predatory thing. Like you're gonna have to attract predators to that area so that they don't want to come in there.
okay, okay. We got see this is happening. Wasn't me, Derek. Y'all ain't gonna be calling me out my thing. Oregon State University. I knew it was an O state. So let's see. Another bug question. They found Ingrid M. Butler. This is the person that just asked that last question. Found leaf-footed bug nymphs. Will the winter kill them off?
Um,
I
not
don't.
necessarily. A lot of them overwinter, so they'll kind of overwinter like stink bugs.
Mm,
So they'll find a warm place. Usually the leaf-footed bugs will find logs and leaf litter to overwinter in, and then their bodies create like a type of antifreeze. They'll store up sugar, and they can survive the winter if it's not extreme. Like you don't have multiple days -0 and things like that. Um, so they can overwinter as adults, and then when as soon as it gets warm again and plants start coming out, they'll start feeding again and mating.
that is rough. And y'all, I'm skipping over these comments about my squirrel story. I can tell you who did and who was the perpetrator of murdering out at least 100 squirrels. But what I can tell you was them squirrels recognize that guy today. And no matter what car he drives, because he's changed his car a couple of times, they know
Oh, they know what he
he ain't.
smells like. It ain't the car. They smell. They know his
They
smell.
they watch him pull into town from the highway. They be like, "Wait a minute, that's him. You hear that, Anita Baker? Yeah, that's him. Tell all the others he's back," and they all hide.
They know his house.
They,
They know.
they no, they're told up and down the coastline. They have told. So let me see. Let's jump to another question back here in the question box. Um, we've talked about keeping beetles away and using some of the pesticides for them. Let's go back up here. Somebody said, "What are scorpions good for?"
Scorpions are actually predators, so they'll feed on a number of different things, insects, other arachnids. So scorpions are arachnids are related to spiders. So they'll feed on other arachnids. They'll also feed on rodents, lizards. Depending on how big the scorpion is, they can even feed on birds and things. So
Mm,
uh, I don't. If you're living like over in the West Coast, you have a number of different types of scorpions that live over there. They are predatory, so they're predators. So that's what they're good for. They feed on other stuff.
there we go. So we got like 5 minutes before I'm like, let's let this woman get back to her business. She does classes. She be teaching the people about the agriculture. You be teaching the children. You know,
Adults,
you
not everybody.
so if you got anything big coming up, this is your opportunity to tell us what's up. Um, any speaking you got, any classes you got, upcoming events. If you just want to wax poetic about anything else you want to say, like go for
So I do have another series on my Black empowerment through agriculture coming up. This is an adult class where we teach people how to start farming operations, especially if you live in urban areas and things and you didn't know that you could actually farm. We'll teach you how to start a particular small scale operation. And so we go through about 16 different industries that you can get started in. And a lot of them, it doesn't take a lot to start up, and some of them it can be kind of expensive. But I never try to count people's pockets, so I can't say what you can and cannot start. But we'll give you the information and so tell you how to get started on that. If you live in Cincinnati, there's another program coming up for high school students learning about the floriculture industry. So learning about cut flowers, floral arranging, and that multi-billion-dollar industry that a lot of Black people are not familiar with. We get flowers all the time, but a lot of us are not in that actual industry, um, growing flowers, delivering flowers, being plant breeders, botanists, entomologists, all types of stuff. A lot of our flowers are imported from Ecuador and other places in South America, as well as the UK. But we have all this land opportunity here that we could actually grow these things here, and Black people could actually be in that industry, um, and making a lot of money. Things like roses, carnations, all those top 10 flowers that you find usually at the flower shops, we could be actually growing those and turning that into an industry. So that's going to be for high school students here, but you have to actually live in Cincinnati. The Black Empowerment Through Agriculture, that's online, so you don't have to actually live in Cincinnati, Kentucky, or Indiana. You can sign on, and you can go to my webpage, it's agracademyinc.org/. Um, oh shoot, what is it? I
Is
can type it in
it
here.
bio? Is it linked in your bio on your page?
Yes, it's on my. It's the link in my bio.
There you go. Take
Yes.
a look at the bio academy. So, side note, um, this online situation where y'all teaching people about the stuff, do y'all have guests to talk about stuff and talk to your people about things?
I do for some classes, and then some of them, it's from my own experiences. So I just teach most of that. But I do have classes where we'll have people come on and speak and talk about, their if they're working in that particular industry, uh, how they got started and things like that. So yeah.
I know a guy who would love to be a part of this.
Hmm.
Allegedly, he took out a neighborhood of squirrels when he was 17. Uh, as I heard it, the squirrels had it coming when they destroyed, because he didn't tell you the story of them destroying the fancy bird feeder. Because I was like, it was me, everybody. I was like, let me make them their own pine cone bird feeders
Yeah.
to get one specifically for the birds. And they took everything. Those old dang squirrels took everything, and they were chewing. And this was like it was a simple wooden bird feeder,
Hmm.
and I hung it up like right outside the viewing point, so my grandmother could look outside the window to the screen door and see the birds. And it was like five squirrels, like a cipher on BET, the BET Awards. It was like five squirrels surrounding this thing and just like rocking it back and forth, trying to chew that they bit through the wood, and it was horrible.
Oh my. Yeah, those don't sound like normal squirrels.
Those were very, it was like there's all this bird seed on all these other pine cones. All you have to do is eat them. Why do you want this one thing? And it's like you're trying to, and then you're trying to take it and like drag it up the tree back to you, and it's like steadily leaking bird seed. Y'all are so stupid. They never
Oh
get rid of squirrels because they are so smart. You got to do something they would never see coming,
yes.
and they definitely see that. Um, so needless to say, if you want me to be a part of this in some way, shape, or form,
Okay.
I done been working in the field for a long time, and I've done some very unique experiences outside of my botanical peers.
Okay.
So let me know because I'm down. This has been great. We talked about some bugs. We didn't really talk what integrated pest management was, but maybe if y'all, are fortunate enough, we'll get Nadia back up here another time. If she don't judge me on the squirrel story, we'll get her up here another time, and we'll go deeper into integrated pest management and what that means.
Yes.
And hopefully in the future, when I have a podcast, I'll try to get you up because I
Okay.
really want to have one. So y'all, this has been real. Y'all check out and follow Nadia, Urban Farm Sister. She is really giving a lot of great education to Black folk about what the plants can do for us, not just in a food way, but in a economic way, and that is really important. I've been Derek the Chocolate Botanist. I want y'all to have a phenomenal night, and chances are I'm not going to make any content for the rest of the year. So y'all have a great new year, and y'all will see me whenever I join back onto a live or post something back up. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. I'm having voice. Y'all have a great night. Nadia, thank you for joining me.
You're welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
Y'all have a good one.